Welcome to the 5th Annual Quit Sugar Summit, where the world's leading scientists, MDs, PhDs, coaches, and new this year, chefs, bring you all the information you need to change your relationship with sugar. Here's your speaker. Hey everybody, it's Mike from sugaraddiction.com and the Sugar Summit. I'm here today with Teresa Shields Parker, who has been on our Gray Star podcast before, our summits before, and she is just... The story is amazing. She's like me. She doesn't have any big degrees or MDs or PhDs, but she's got this, gang. At one time, she weighed 430 pounds, and she's lost 260 pounds. And 100 of that she's lost over and over again, I think, is the story, if I remember correctly, and had to do it again. But she's maintained that weight loss for many, many years. Now, I can't even remember how many, but a lot of years. And she's an amazing educator for folks. She's really well known in the Christian community, but now she's even getting more well known in the broader community. But Teresa, thanks for doing this again. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So tell the folks your story. I mean, it's an amazing one. It's one that needs to get out over and over again because of the correlation that you drew and draw to your addictive eating and the sugar and the weight. We got that saying, I'm sure you've heard it, they come for the vanity and they stay for the sanity, right? So they always think they need to lose weight and they think sugar and flour and white stuff is the culprit. But then they start to realize that a lot more in their life and a lot more in their health changes once they get off the crap. So go for it.
Yeah, well, for years, I was wallowing in that morbid obesity up to super morbid obesity, always wanting to go on the next great diet to change whatever was wrong with me. I wanted to lose weight, but there's a great scripture, Romans 7:19, that says, the good I want to do, I don't do. The thing I don't want to do, that's what I do. And that was me. That was me for all of my adult life. I wanted to lose weight. I really, as a Christian, I felt like God wanted me to lose weight because he wanted me healthy. But I just, I would try this diet, and I have really good willpower for about 6 to 9 months, and I could lose 100 pounds by greatly restricting what I ate. And many times those diets would include stop eating sugar or greatly reducing sugar. And for that time frame, if I didn't eat sugar, didn't eat bread, lowered my calorie intake, I could lose the weight. But I was always looking for what is the reward at the end of all of this hard work of giving up all of this stuff and greatly limiting everything. And my reward was always, well, I'm gonna bake something really ooey gooey, and it was always Mama's oatmeal cake because that was my favorite dessert. And so at the end of the diet, I would bake it, and that would be it. I would be off and gone again, and starting to just eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And you would think that the diet would have taught me something, but it didn't, because it wasn't a lifestyle change. I didn't look at it as a lifestyle change. I looked at it as a quick fix to fix whatever my problem was, because I see everybody around me eating whatever they want, but they're not gaining a lot of weight. So I can't figure out, why can't I do it? And the problem that I didn't understand was people might be eating a dessert when I saw them eating a dessert, but they weren't eating it all the time like I was. They were not addicted like I was. Now, I never understood that I was addicted to sugar. Even as far back as 1977, it's the first time I remember. I'm a journaler, and I like to journal my prayers to God. And so in 1977 was when I was reading Matthew 17:20, which is the passage that talks about, if you have faith, the grain of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move, and it'll move. And so I was reading that, and the thought crossed my mind, I have a mountain of flesh on my body. Now, at that time, I had probably gone over the 200 mark, approaching 250, and I thought that was horrible right then. You know, I was monstrous size, I thought. So, not going to be what, you know, wasn't what I was going to eventually weigh, but, you know, right then it was overwhelming to me.
Mm.
And so I said, God, I've got a mountain of flesh on my body. How can this mountain be moved? And in 1977, when when I had heard nothing about sugar addiction, God gave me a plan. He said, stop eating sugar, eat more meats, fruits, and vegetables, and stop eating so much bread.
Mm.
And I wrote it in my journal, and I wrote down my response to him, which was, nice plan, God. If I could do that, I would lose weight, but I can't do that.
Mm.
And so for the next 30 years, I tried to lose weight on my own with all of these diets that had some semblance of those elements that God had told me about. And they didn't work because I hadn't gotten the first part of the equation right,
Mm.
which was stop eating sugar. And when God says stop, he means stop. He doesn't mean quit it for a little while and go back to it when you want to. He said stop. He told me to stop. Now, I do Christian weight loss coaching these days. And one of the things I tell the people in my group that some of them come into the group with only like 20 pounds to lose. They may not be sugar addicts. They
Mm.
might be. I've known people who are thinner like that, or, you know, just a little bit above normal weight, who tell me they are sugar addicts because they will binge on sugar and then they will try to, you know, over exercise, like run 10 miles a day for every day of the week to try to get that off so that they can then eat the sugar again. So they know that sugar is controlling their life. And that's kind of what a sugar addict is, or what I've come to know sugar addiction is. But some people aren't. Some people can just limit sugar. And I understand that. So, you know, I understand that sugar addiction for some people is like alcohol addiction is for many
Mm.
people. Now, some people can drink a little alcohol and be fine, but we don't worry about them, right? They're okay. It's only the alcoholics that
Right.
we criminalize, and you know, that have the problems and are the difficult ones. But it starts somewhere, and you don't know how, you know, where you're going to end up. So, you know, learning good habits with sugar, I think, starts very early. And for me, what my grandmother fed me and how how I felt the love and the comfort that came from her through, you know, being able to eat whatever you want, whenever you want it, as much as you want. All the food was laid out. You could go back as often as you want. As long as you were at grandma's, you could eat anything. It didn't matter. And I saw that as that's what I want. That's comfort. That's love.
Mm.
And so when I got older, felt kind of like, oh no, I'm out in the big bad world. I've got to make my own way now. I need grandma's comfort, but she's not here. So I'm going to bake, you know, something that she taught me how to make. So
Sugar is love. That's so true. I mean, that
love and
was the same in
comfort.
my family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell the folks at the beginning, I mean, I always try and pull this out of folks. And you've gone through it like I have, and a bunch of other people have gone through it many, many times. But at the beginning, people are afraid, and there is actual physical withdrawals, and it's a hard to get that first 30 days in. And we'll talk about making it a lifestyle in a minute. But how do we get them through that? How do they get ready mentally, get ready physically, get their house ready, get their spouse ready, their family ready, their workmate? How do they actually get to a point where they're dealing with a clean body with no sugar for maybe the first time in their whole life, since they're a child, or maybe the womb, who knows. But how do they get through that first? Because they're scared right now. This is probably going to go out to 1 million people this year. Like they're afraid, they're scared about this. They've been sheltered in place, they've been eating badly, but they know they need and want to quit. So tell them how to get mentally ready, and then the physical part too, if you would.
Well, it's interesting because the way I attacked the sugar addiction was first, I had to understand that I am a sugar addict.
Mm,
So just going on another diet and trying to get rid of sugar was not going to work for me. I wanted lifestyle change. I That was my goal when I started this was, and I didn't know how to do that. So the key, what for me, and this was a big key for me, was to surrender the fact that I did
mm,
not know what to do. For the
mm,
first time in my life, I was no longer in control of this issue. I can't control it. And when I came to that understanding that I am weak around sugar, that it is like as bad as an alcoholic is with alcohol,
mm,
I'm the same way with sugar. I'm a sugar addict. As a matter of fact, the first time I understood that, I happened to be in a meeting where a man was telling his story about getting free from alcohol.
mm,
I'm halfway listening to it. He's a friend of mine. I've heard his story before. But in the middle of his story, he said, alcohol is one molecule away from sugar. Alcohol is liquid sugar. And that was it for me. That was the point at which I finally understood I am like an alcoholic, only with sugar. And I remember at the end of that story, I asked him, can a person be addicted to sugar? Now, this was before we heard much about sugar addiction. So this was, I think this was 2008,
mm,
something like that. I don't know the date exactly, but it was before all of the sugar addiction information came out.
right.
And he said to me, I don't know all of the physical parts of it, but I know you can be addicted to anything that controls you.
Mm,
And sugar controlled me because my life revolved around when I could eat what I wanted to eat, how much, and making sure I had, all of my favorite foods and never wanting to be without them and thinking I would die if I couldn't have them. And, it controlled my life. And so my first step had to be understanding I am like an alcoholic, only with sugar,
mm,
and surrendering that, laying that down, giving that to God completely. It was a surrender thing. It is the hardest part of the journey. I've
mm.
actually divided my weight loss journey into 5 stages. And the first one is wishful thinker, which is, wishing I could get this done and accepting
Wishes.
the fact that, okay, I've got a problem, but I don't really know how to fix it. Second stage is willing owner. And willing owner is when you accept fully what your problem is, and then you surrender it to God and you ask Him to lead you on the journey. So that's a long introduction to uh, how I actually gave sugar up. But
Mm,
because I wanted this to be lifestyle change, I knew it had to be different from the way I had done it before, which was I'm eating this way now, I'm eating everything I want now, and all of a sudden, bam, I stop and I give up sugar and I give up everything and I totally change my lifestyle. That doesn't work. Didn't work for me ever because I never learned anything when I did that.
mm,
What I had to do, and what it was actually this guy that I was listening to became my mentor and my guide on the journey because after he gave up the alcohol, he actually then started binging on sugar. And that is a common thing that happens with alcoholics. They get into the sugar addiction part of it because it's all similar. The addictive process is all similar. And so he actually had a heart attack from that whole thing of the overeating part of it. So anyway, one of the things he taught me was what I call stop start. And stop start is a way to stop a bad habit and start a good one. So for me, it was, I knew before I'd given it up all at once, and yet I would go back to it because I was always wanting it, wanting it, wanting it. So what he taught me to do was pick something small, some small thing that you're eating now that's sugary, and give that up. So tell yourself you're going to give that up, put firm boundaries around it, and focus on some good habit you want to start. So for me, it was I gave up candy because candy had become a trigger food, something I would just sit there and eat, by the bags full. And he said, put SMART goals around it, make it, make it, make it. Now I can't even remember what the S stands for. Anyway, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely, and make it be a SMART goal that you understand, so your brain totally understands what it is, and be specific. That's the S, specific. Be real specific about what you're going to do. Tell your brain you're going to give up candy, all candy. I even gave up the sugar-free candies because they would trigger me to want sugar candies. So I gave up all candies. And then the thing I wanted to start, he's like, you put firm boundaries around the stop. And it's like you've got an electric fence around that particular thing and you can't touch it. And that's done. That's over here. And since it was a small thing, it was easy to, put that over here. And then start something that is a good habit. Well, the thing that I knew I needed to start, not necessarily the thing I wanted to start, but I knew it would be good for me, was to start exercise. And so because of some issues with my legs, I needed to do exercise in the water. So I started jogging in the water 3 times a day, 30 minutes, or 3 times a week, 30 minutes a day. And he led me to make it be very specific. Tell yourself exactly when you're going, put it on your calendar, where you're going, all of that kind of stuff, so that your brain knows that this is what you're going to do. So I started that then, and that has become a habit. Of course, in these crazy times we're in, my pool is closed and I can't go, but it's a habit that I've had for all of these years. And then what you do after a week or so, and you have that habit firmly ingrained, then you add something else. It's a way to show yourself, I can be successful at something like this. I can do this. And doing it this way, I did not have the withdrawals, the physical withdrawals. Most of my withdrawals were emotional and spiritual. So emotional, thinking, how can I survive if I'm not, because food had become a way for me to be even keel and to not let my emotions go crazy. And, of course, as a Christian, you don't want to be mad. You don't want to be angry. You don't want to scream at people. And I thought, I'm going to be a screaming maniac because, my mother had some emotional problems like that. She had some actual diagnosed problems where she had wide mood swings. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be more even keel. And so, I found food as a way to dampen me when I was, angry. Right. But it takes more of that same, sugar. If you're eating a sugary treat, it's going to take more of that the next time. It's a reuptake drug. So the more sugar you eat, the next time the more you need, to get that same feeling. And so it's a constant battle with what you're doing. So starting small helped me, and then, then I noticed, my coach talked to me about noticing, okay, what's the next thing you're craving? And so the next thing I was craving was like baked things, like especially brownies or cookies or anything I had a mix in the cabinet for. And so I pitched all of those, which was really hard, and stopped, doing that, and increased my exercise time to like 45 minutes a day, 3 times a week, and um, you know, went forward with that. And then I noticed that the next thing was um, like pastries, donuts, and cinnamon rolls and stuff like that. And so I stopped that, and I increased my exercise time to 5 days a week, and just, continued to do that. Then, when I had pretty much gotten all of the sugar out of my system, I mean, one of the reasons when I started, I wanted to say I want to give up all sugar because that was my goal, right? And it took me probably about 3 months to get to the point where I felt like, okay, now maybe I can give up all sugar. Because one of my issues is I want to do things right. If I can't do them all the way, I don't want to do them at all. And I knew there was sugar in a lot of things, so I didn't know what all had sugar in it. So I started just giving myself some grace, but reading the labels and seeing what has sugar, what doesn't have sugar, how I can make things that don't have sugar, like um, tomato sauces and stuff like that. How can I make that at home? How can I do the things that I want to do that will be sugar free? And, then just started adding the good habits that I wanted to add. Eventually, I decided to go gluten free because I saw breads became a big issue. And actually, that was part of the equation back in 1977 that God had given me, was stop eating so much bread. So one of the ways I figured out to do that was to tell myself to eat gluten free. So there are gluten free breads, but I don't like them because I like the taste of the other bread. So doing gluten free helps me not go that step towards any kind of pastries or any kind of things like that. And so that was helpful. And when I did that, when I decided to go gluten free, um, one of my doctors mentioned it to me as a next step. And he said, just do it for 2 months. Make it a commitment to do it for 2 months. If you don't feel better in 2 months, then, you can always go back to what you were doing before. Well, in 2 months, I saw how much better I felt and how much weight I was losing and how easy it really had become for me. I'd already given up sugar. Now giving up the breads was another, because that also is carb addiction. It feeds the sugar addiction. Um, and so anyway, because of doing all of that, as I'm going along, there were emotional issues I had to confront as well. And so those really play into the whole picture for me more than almost anything else.
I'm very interested in this. This is part of what we talk about a lot, and not too many people are really aware that not only is the second step, it's one of the main steps, and like you said, it's very, very important. So tell us about that. Tell us how you had to change emotionally, understand emotionally, grow emotionally, to make it a lifestyle.
Yeah, one of my courses in my coaching group that we're going to be starting in May is called Stop Eating Your Emotions.
Hmm.
And that's really what we do when we try to, um, you know, when anything comes up emotionally that triggers us, then we just want to eat to make it go away. I mean, during times of crisis like we're in now, people want to eat to make those feelings of out of control feelings go away. Part of those come from when we're children, and they're kind of ingrained in us because, what does mom do? She she gives you a Tootsie Roll to keep you quiet. Or, she, or like my grandmother allows you to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, when you're at grandma's. So of course you love grandma and you want to go there all the time.
Right.
But it's a comfort, and it's we feel like comfort is actually one of the basic human needs. We need comfort. So it's not something, it's not that we don't need comfort. We need comfort. We need comfort to get through this world. That's why we have relationships and all of the kinds of things that buoy us up in the world. But when we think that no one else is helping us as much as the food is helping us, then we can just dismiss everyone and everything else, and we can just be fine with us and food, us and sugar. As a matter of fact, I have a blog post on my website called Goodbye Sugar, and it's really kind of personifying sugar as a companion, and thinking that sugar is doing all these great things for me, when in actuality it's slowly killing me. And when I understand it's slowly killing me, I break up with it and kick it out of my life. And that's really what we have to do, because sugar becomes that kind of companion in our life. And I'm speaking from the viewpoint of extreme obesity, okay? Because having weighed 430 pounds, having lost over 260 pounds, that's extreme, okay? And so that's the point of where I'm speaking from. And most of the people that I coach who are in that category have failed relationships or have issues in their life. I was sexually molested when I was 11. That's part of my issue, part of my story, because I didn't tell anybody about it. I thought they would take his side because he was a well-loved friend of our family. And that happens a lot, and I understand that from everything I've read since, and all of the people who've talked to me since I wrote my memoir, Sweet Grace, back in 2013. But because what I was trying to do was protect myself. So I felt like the more layers of protection I had on me, the more I could insulate myself from any harm that might be done to me. So protection is a big issue. So that means fear is a big issue. And we are afraid, and we don't feel like we have anyone to rely on. Okay, so then here's where God comes in. Because our issue is really a spiritual issue. Because we have begun to believe that father or a father image, it wasn't my dad in my case, but this man who was in our family was kind of like a father-like image in the family. And because of that, then I see him as a monster. And so then what we begin to see is Father God might misuse us in some way. We transfer that feeling that we had with that person. And this happens a lot with many women that I coach. Their dads were alcoholics. Their dads abandoned them. They some of them died at an early age. That's not the dad's fault, but there was still an absence of father in their life. And so that translates to God is not here. Father, you talk about God as a father? Well, someone whose dad abandoned them and has no father figure in their life doesn't understand that. They don't understand God as a father. So there's a process we go through to basically forgive our father for leaving us, if it's abandonment, or forgive the father for hurting us, if it's alcoholism or something like that, or for hurting our mother, or for whatever the dad did. And then we renounce the lie that God will do the same thing to us. And then we ask him, what is your truth? Now, we already know the truth about God. We know the head knowledge. Most people do. We know the scriptures. We know what they say. but it's that experiential knowledge of letting God speak to you in a real way in that kind of situation and give you his truth. And that really helps change us and helps us understand, because basically at 11 years old, when I was afraid, that 11-year-old girl was emotionally driving my life for the rest of my life until I chose to forgive her and embrace her as an adult and say, I understand what you went through and I understand how you felt back then. Because I still have all of those feels in me, you know,
Mm.
and those feels are guiding me and causing me to be okay with eating. So even after I lost the weight, there was still a segment of time where I realized, okay, I've lost the weight. That's my plan A. Following God is my plan A. But plan B is still back there. And plan B is going to sugar. And so I had to go through all of these steps to really get this out of my life and understand who God is and how God will lead me on this journey and will continue to lead me. And he's not like the man who abused me. He is the Father who loves me, and he won't leave me, you know, without resources. He will be the one to protect me. He will be the one to provide for me. He'll be the one to set my identity.
Wow. I love it. I really do. I mean, this tie to the emotional recovery is so important. People are not, they're just not paying attention to it. They're not giving sugar the power that an alcohol would to tamp down emotions and stuff. When in reality now, last 5 years, the science is absolutely proving it out. Dopamine, serotonin, all the same brain reward stuff are being activated. And we're talking about a dose that's so much higher. I mean, 20 teaspoons average or more. And then someone that's obese is, 30, 40 teaspoons a day they're pounding through their body. It's just they're just holding their emotions down. They're the ones they're dealing with today, and the ones, like you say, the trauma that they're trying to uncover. So as you move forward and you're trying to at least have kind of accepted these ideas, and they're all really amazing. That, I mean, it's almost like you've matured since the last time I talked to you. It just gets better and better. Um, how do they like sustain it? Like they have to change sometimes. Their family sometimes doesn't want to change. Their church group, their work group, their friends, they're seemingly they want to stay the same, or they're not ready or whatever. But does it feel isolating for them? And how do they make it into a lifestyle that they can maintain over a long period of time, like you have?
Well, that is a big issue, because there will be people, and many women in my group have had their husbands who have been really, you know, uh, standoffish about this, because why? They like the way their wife cooks, and they have this probably the same problems she does, maybe just not as bad as she has it, but they don't want her to lose the weight,
Mm.
because then that means that she'll stop cooking. And so one of the things I tell them is you have to be honest with your family. You have to let them know this is killing me. And if I don't change my life, I will be dead. And for me, that was a truth. So
Mm.
a cardiac surgeon had given me 5 years to live if I didn't lose 100 pounds.
Wow.
But I I lost weight on another diet, but then I found myself gaining the weight back again, and that was part of the impetus for me to really get serious about what's going on here.
Mm.
But for those who have resistance, it's a real process of continuing to help the people around them understand and to tell them, look, I'm going to be cooking differently. You may not like what I cook. You don't have to eat what I cook. If you want to buy pot pies or whatever and cook them for yourself, that's fine. But this is what I have to do for me. So you have to, that's why the surrender has to be in there, because you have to be surrendered to this issue, to understanding that this is what is effective for you. Now, will there be times you go back? Oh, yeah. There will be times you mess up. You won't be perfect. I mean, I remember the first time that Christmas came around and my daughter came home from college and wanted to bake sugar cookies, which was something we'd done a lot. And I thought, oh, okay, I haven't had a cookie in a year. I can do this. I'm good, you know. And so she and I baked sugar cookies and we cut them out and I said, okay, we're going to save these for Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, I think it was, when the family comes and everybody can decorate their cookies, then they can all take them home with them, right? So now I've got them all out of my house. So I didn't eat any dough when we were cooking. I didn't snitch any cookies beforehand because they were all for a purpose, right? But then when they came, they all had fun decorating, but they didn't take them with them. And so here is where my secret eating thing comes in, that habit that I had had before, because I'm cleaning up the kitchen, everybody's gone to bed, they're all asleep, and I'm eating cookies, eating sugar cookies. And I, I did that. I have to say I did that the first night. The next morning I got up, I took another sugar cookie, and I said, okay, I said, this is not working. So I told my kids, both grown by that time, but they were home for Christmas break. And I said, if you want any of these cookies, and I told my husband the same thing, you want any of these cookies, take them and hide them from me. Otherwise, they're going in the trash. And they all said, oh no, we've had enough sugar cookies. And so I threw them away. I did do that. I threw them all away. And it was very freeing to do that, because I saw how they can capture me again so easy. And so failure, I can remember in the past when I was on diets, and if I failed on anything, then I thought, I'm done for. I can't, obviously this doesn't work, so no big, I'll just give it all up, right? I mean, that's what we do on a diet. But what we have to realize about lifestyle change and about this journey out of sugar addiction is that failure is one of our greatest teachers, because failure shows us what we should not do and helps us realize what we can do. I mean, without failure, we would never learn anything. We wouldn't learn how to walk. We wouldn't learn how to ride a bike. There would be very few things we learn unless we have failed at it, and that is the biggest teacher that we can have.
I love it. I love it. So what kind, I don't want to hold you this or anything, but what ratio of folks make it? You know what I mean? What ratio of folks get with the program? And because the recidivism rate, it's lower in the diet industry, and I believe it has to do with the actual addiction to sugar, because they do some sort of restriction of the white stuff, they lose the pounds, and then 90 or 95% of them gain it back. And I just, along with the last question, I mean, how do you prevent that? I mean, is there a secret formula? We think it's community in a lot of ways, that, you have other people that are not in your family or not in your circle to rely on. What has been your experience with that, to keep them on this, I don't want to say straight and narrow, but yeah, I mean, to keep them on the lifestyle?
Well, community is a big part of it, I think, because in my 5 stages of weight loss, second stage is watchful learner, which is where you're learning about how to do all of this. And then the next stage is wholehearted traveler, and that's where you're implementing the things you've learned, but you're going through the failure, right? It's kind of like the student teacher, after she graduates college, then she has to student teach for a year. She has to learn how to apply all of that kind of stuff. Lots of times in stage 4, that's where people stop. So that's where people get out of the community because they've already learned everything, so they feel like they've got it down pat. And then they come up like I came up to a time where you fail, where you eat the sugar cookies
Hmm.
and you don't know how to stop eating the sugar cookies. If I hadn't stopped eating the sugar cookies, that would have been a big problem. I was in a community at that time, in a group with my coach, and we were very open about, what things we had done. And he was helping me understand what had happened there and how to get through that emotionally and how to see the failure as actually something that can turn into a success. So if they don't stay in community, they will need a community again sometime
Mm.
because stage 5 is the overcomer stage, and that's that's the stage where we think we've made it. But the fact is, even at stage 5, where you've overcome all of these things, if the problem with that stage, the biggest problem is pride, because we get to the point where we think we know it all and we stop relying on God to help us through. We just go headlong, and then there will come a time when we'll be tempted again, and we may have to, you know we may give in to that temptation, and then we have to go back down on our 5 stages, and we probably have to go back down to willing owner and surrender again. So this is not, even though I made it like a linear like a linear thing, it's really not linear.
Right.
It's a learning cycle, and we keep learning again and again. We learn over and over and over. If people will stay in community and stay with the program and stay with being honest and being open, and asking for help, instead of just coming in and telling people when they've succeeded, also say when you failed, and be
Mm.
open to some kind of input from those of us who've been are further along on the journey. That's the thing that really helps. I've been coaching for 6 years now, and I have people who have been in my group all that time,
Wow.
and they're being very successful, and they are the people that really help me coach in the group because they know the answers and they've been there before, but they
Right.
also know that they still need the community,
Right.
and that's the
I
important
love it.
part.
That's so true. I love your cycle of learning. It's so, in the early days, I thought, once they had the information, they could just do it, right? And a few people did, but most of the folks needed that community group, that group of people to keep circling back to. And it largely, almost never, was in their family or their church or their workmates or schoolmates. It was always someone who's made that decision. So, what do you got going in the future? I mean, how do you see this playing out as far as, I mean, do you have in-person church group meetings, or do you do it mostly online? And as far as your community growth and stuff, how's that happening? I mean, how are the folks, is this a good time? And do you see sometime in the future where maybe more people will realize that this obesity crisis has to do with sugar?
I don't know about that. I do know that I used to think in person was best, but to tell you the truth, I really like online learning
Mm,
because you can attract people from all over the world. I have a lady in my group from Australia, um,
mhm.
and all over the country, East Coast to West Coast. We do Zoom calls once a month where we or do a live Zoom call where
Sure.
those that can are on that call, and I will coach them through issues if they're brave enough to come on the call and talk about them. And anytime that happens, everyone on the call, and then we also, of course, have the replay in the group, they all get something out of that. They all start understanding the process, especially this emotional healing process, because the emotional healing and the spiritual part of it go together. So we think that we want to lose weight, that if we just lose weight, everything in our life will magically change. But that is not true. That's just not true. Because the underlying problems that have caused us to get there are emotional and spiritual, and they go together. And if we can continue, none of us are going to be perfect. You know, even those in the wise overcomer stage, we're not perfect. We've got problems, and we continue to learn. So being a learner is a lifelong thing, and we continue to be challenged with, okay, God, how does this work, and how can I help other people learn this more? So, you know, I do with my overcomers, it's called Overcomers Christian Weight Loss Academy, and I've taken all of my courses. Like I said, I've been coaching for 6 years, and I was doing a video a week for all of that time. At least for 5 of those years, I was doing a video a week, and I've taken most of those videos, put them into courses. I have them in an online learning vault that they have access to when they come in as members. But I also have a private Facebook group where we go through one course together, and we go through that one lesson a week, and we talk about that, and have dialogue about that. And then we have like I said, the monthly meeting. And anytime they can come into that Facebook group and ask a question or post a comment, and I or someone else will definitely answer them. I'm in there every week, every day actually. And so I see what the postings are, but a lot of my members, like I said, have been in there a long time too, and they're very good at encouraging and supporting and uplifting people and pointing them in the right direction. And so for me, the online group is very helpful, I think, if people will come in and they will post and they will do the work. If they don't do the work, it's not going to work.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And really, thanks for talking about the emotional side of it. I mean, I don't think people get it. We have a lot of scientists and MDs that think that it's just a physical thing, and it's so important. And, you know, people like yourself who've actually been doing it a while, and some of the other teachers really get it, and I appreciate that. So where can the folks find you online, Teresa? Where's what I know just Teresa Shields Parker. Is there another site?
TeresaShieldsParker.com is my website, and on there you'll find my podcast. Sweet Grace for Your Journey is my podcast. Just started that in 2019, and you'll find there's a weight loss tab. It has the Overcomers Academy. I did feel like God told me to open the doors to Overcomers Academy and keep it open especially during this crazy time we're in, because those who need help want it right now. And so it's open, and I have, in the past, I've only opened it a few times a year, but I really felt like this was what I needed to do. And on there, you'll also find my books. I've written 5 books and 2 study guides.
Okay.
So all of those are on there as well. My blogs are on there. So everything is there. My page on Facebook is Teresa Shields Parker, my business page. And on Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, I'm at Tree Parker, Tree Parker. So
Perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're doing such great work out there in the world, and keep it up, okay?
thank you.
All right, take care.
We hope you're enjoying all the speakers. We know that 6 or 7 speakers a day is overwhelming, even during a lockdown. To be able to listen to all the speakers over and over again forever and get hundreds of dollars worth of sugar reduction bonuses, make sure that you click on the speakers package link and guarantee your success.